Hi, and thank you for listening to this seventh episode of Mediumystic. I'm your host, Kristen Harlow. Today, I sit down with psychic medium Dana DeCicco and energy worker and psychic medium Jacqueline Breda to discuss divine feminine energy, the integration of divine and masculine energy, and the experience of shamanic journey for healing. It's a really enlightening conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Jacqueline and Dana, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about what we plan to talk about. Dana, you actually sat down with me a few weeks ago, so you're not a stranger to anyone who's listening, I don't think. Jacqueline, you and I met because the three of us share a psychic medium circle that we used to go to together. And that was always very fun. So just thought we could sit down and have a discussion about what Dana was telling me about your journeys that you do together, and the fact that you have found yourself coming up against, or not against, coming up with the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And I feel like the divine feminine in particular has, I think it's probably been about 10 years since my exposure to the idea of the rising of the divine feminine, the ascension of the divine feminine. Um, and I think a lot of people have a question about what that means really. What is the divine feminine? And we know that it's the counterpart, the feminine counterpart of God or the Great Spirit or whatever your language is for it. But I also think it can be something more personal as well. Probably about, I think it was 10 years ago or so, I had a medicine experience where I suddenly became aware of an older woman, probably in her 70s, sitting on the corner of a very old, what seemed to be Middle Eastern, maybe French Mediterranean town, very dusty. And she was begging on the corner. And her eye was crossed, and she never got any love. That's what I really picked up on. And I began to realize that I was her, and that somehow it felt like this had been a past life. And then it switched a little later on, and I was in a cave, and I was really, really like legitimately in this cave, seeing the stones, 3D, really, really amazing. And I just came to this understanding that she was Mary Magdalene, and that somehow I had some kind of experience of Mary Magdalene in a past life in some way. And I did research, and apparently it is thought by some schools that Mary Magdalene did live in a cave at the end of her life. And then, fascinatingly, I began to meet more and more women in particular who also felt that they had this strong connection to Mary Magdalene in a past life, and also felt that they were carrying some DNA code of Mary Magdalene into this life to rise this energy, to ascend this energy, I think. And to me, that's the personal version of divine feminine. Does that sound, have you had that kind of, Jacqueline, let's start with you. Have you had that kind of personal experience with the divine feminine that would kind of, reflect that idea?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely have a strong connection to Mary Magdalene, and she's one of my guides. And I remember it's very interesting that you say a cave, because I know that actually Dana and and you may have been there as well, but I know specifically Dana and I had journeyed once, and we were in a cave under the water, and
Mm.
we had gone into the cave, and I saw this little doorway, and I went in, and it was a tiny little temple inside, like a church. And when I went kind of to the back of the room, I looked up, and there was this hole with glass, and there was a light coming down, and I said, and Jesus somehow was there. I don't remember exactly, but his energy was there. And I asked him, I said, can I go through? Like, what's above? And I went and he let me, and he let me go up into the light, and I came out on this shore, and Mary Magdalene came to me and she gave me a book, and she opened the book, and I believe that was kind of the end of the journey. There may have been some other things happening, but with her, what I felt from that book is that she was showing me that her sacred knowledge was kind of suppressed,
Mm-hmm.
is what I was feeling, and that she was giving me and handing me the book and opening it, and kind of opening, was almost like an initiation for me, opening me up into that light. So that's definitely one way, but one other way that she's come to me and really beautifully is, I've been on this healing journey with Dana, and Mary Magdalene came to me once and she showed me this healing circle, this very specific light pink rose petals in a circle. And she said to me, anytime that you need healing, you come to the circle and you step inside and you sit down, and I will send you my healing.
Mm.
And for me, that was just incredible. There are many other ways that she has come to me. Her and Jesus, both. Um, but those are the two most specific I can think of. But
Yeah.
really beautiful, powerful energy.
Oh yeah, and it
Mhm.
really does feel like, because of this idea of her suppression and the her wisdom and her mere existence, the suppression of it throughout the ages, throughout the past 2000 years, it does feel like this idea of the rising of the divine feminine would come through her, you know? There are definitely, there's more information about her now. The church, I think recently, like in 2016 or something, decided to at least say that she's an apostle of the apostles. Before, they wouldn't say she was an apostle at all. Now, they're not saying she's an apostle. They're saying she's an apostle to the apostles. So I'm sure that's a lessening in some way. I don't think it's what it should be, which is a heightening, because then you hear about the Dead Sea Scrolls found in Nag Hammadi, and the fact that a lot of them said, not a lot, but a few of them said that she was Jesus's special, partner, that she was his greatest support, and that she understood him the most. So it does, and to have her be suppressed, and then suddenly to see the information about her beginning to come to the surface, to see the divine feminine rising in both our own personal lives, and also, like, for instance, 2017, Me Too, that whole awakening of feminine power and feminine, what the female deserves. But anyway, Dana, what about you? What's your take on that?
I mean, absolutely, she is representative of the divine feminine in the same way Jesus is representative of the divine masculine. And there we see them in that sort of balance, that sort of uh, working together, sort of, and to teach us something about it. It's my personal opinion that they were partners. Why, she was his wife, and I think that we can look at that um, sort of they're like two sides of a whole package. And we can see the divine feminine in her, and we see it in, goddess-based religions. We see it in a lot of different things. But it's fascinating to think she individually came to the three of us here at different times in our lives. We all have a different and special connection with her. We've had connections and journeys together with her. I think she's absolutely a part of the reclaiming of our divine femininity as women. And I think that she has a really important part of it. I think that she can teach us something about healing our mother wound. And I think that, once we can see her, reclaim her spot as Jesus's partners, we can also come to understand there's tons of proof that she bore his child too, that's out there, and that's a whole nother thing. I don't think
Is
we need to
there
go
is
into like
there is there
that side of it.
is there tons of
It, it
proof?
there is lots of theories about it and things that have
Theories,
come up
but
about it. I'll definitely share things about you. Yeah, I mean, proof, right? I mean, I guess at the end of the day, where's the proof in any of it, right?
there's really
But
not even any proof that Jesus existed, except for one word in, a
yeah,
history written by Josephus, so, but I mean, there are many theories
yeah.
that say that she had his child. Yes. Yeah.
What I think is also fascinating about her is she comes to us with the cave, the connection to the cave again. And
Yeah.
that's something that we see on our journeys a lot. We go into caves, we come out of them, we willingly walk into them. Sometimes we fall into them. There's all different ways in which this kind of represents itself. So I think that that's a symbol of her. Another one which Jacqueline talked about, and I remember that beautiful journey with the flowers, is she's connected to flowers, roses especially.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting with the cave thing. Uh, Apparently it's thought one of the main theories about what happened to her after Jesus died, or whatever happened to Jesus. She apparently went to France. There's pretty good, scholarship about the idea that she wound up in France and she spread Jesus's word with, I forget who came with her. Maybe I think James maybe is the one who went with her, and anyone else, maybe a couple of other people. And she preached Jesus's good news, quote unquote, and spent many, many years. And then in the end, she was in a cave. She prayed and meditated in a cave, they say, until the end of her life, for many, many, many years. So the cave thing, I think, comes from maybe that too.
It's so beautiful to see her return to this original divine feminine, our sacred Mother Earth, right? I mean, she's literally going back into her own, reconnecting herself with her own divine femininity, which I think when we talk about the divine feminine and masculine, the feminine is the earth, it's our literal Mother Earth, and then the sky is the Father. That's another way I think to look at how that
Mm-hmm.
energy plays out in not only journeying but really in the balance of nature.
Mm-hmm. So I think, Jacqueline, I think you said that both of you together have been having a healing like a real healing journey around the divine feminine. What's been happening with that? What have you been experiencing?
So much, so much. But you know what? Actually, really quick, I just want to share because I think it's important. I was going to save it for us to discuss later, but since we're here talking about the feminine and the masculine, um, so I do Reiki as well. And I don't know if either of you were here for this journey. It might have been in my own journey, but I just wanted to mention I had this journey and it's so curious how things work, right, in the psychic world, because even like years later or months later, we can go back and we can still learn something
Mm-hmm.
from, a journey that we had before, or we can still understand something deeper. So as you guys were talking, it hit me. But I had this journey where I was in a cave and I traveled down into this one cavern, and Mary and Jesus were there, and she handed me a baby boy. And then I went into the back of the cave and she gave me she's I don't know if it was her or Jesus, but one of them, might have been Jesus actually, came to me and gave me. Now, if anyone does Reiki, that you'll know that there in the level 1 and level 2, there are 3 main Reiki symbols that we use. In the master level, there's a 4th, but I haven't done that yet. And it's nothing, I've looked up the symbol, it's nothing like this, but they came to me and they gave me what they said is another Reiki symbol. And I researched it, and nowhere in Reiki, it does exist. I mean, we've all seen this symbol. I don't know if there's a name for it, but they gave me this Reiki symbol and they told me, so in Japanese, there's different names for the symbols. And they told me this one is called Sahatki. And it's basically, I don't know the name of it, but it's basically the spiral where it's a spiral at the top and then it goes down and it curls into a spiral at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like this S shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've used this over the past few years in my Reiki, and they told me it's divine wisdom and love. That's the
Wow.
purpose of this symbol. But what's very interesting is I don't know what triggered it, but just as I was listening to the two of you talk, you know, it just hit me. One, we have the child. She literally handed me a baby boy. And if you draw the symbol and you look at it, it's 2 spirals connected. So for me, it's representing again that feminine linking with the masculine, and the
Mm-hmm.
middle place would be the child, or, the Trinity. And I mean, there's so much symbolism in that.
Beautiful.
Anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I thought it was very, very interesting. But back to your question.
Mm.
So the feminine for me, my journey actually began because of a desire to connect more deeply with source. And the reason that I got into this is because I was following this one spiritual leader, and she was saying something that really hit me hard. And she said, you know, we have our mothers and our fathers in this lifetime, but many of us, including myself, haven't gotten that unconditional love. You know, there are people out there who have beautiful families and great mothers and fathers, but some of us, you know, grow up where we don't have that experience. And so she said in her healing that even though, you know, of course, respectful to the mothers and biological mothers and fathers in our lives, but she said she didn't find that deep unconditional love. And so she went to source. And she believes in this union, which I do as well, of divine masculine and divine feminine together, our source
Mm-hmm.
or God, or, you know, whatever you want
Right.
to label it. And so I thought to myself, that's very curious. And, you know, both with my mother and father, I never got that love. And so I started, you know, really just wanting to go deeper and to find that love. But where it took me, not only with the feminine, but also with the masculine, and I think Dana would probably agree with this, is that it took us on a journey where we, in order to like connect, or for me anyway, for me to connect with source, we first we first have to clear all of the wounding and the trauma and the pain
Mm-hmm.
that's surrounding the divine feminine and masculine, not only in this lifetime, but past lifetimes and parallel lifetimes as well. So that's where my journey began. And it's been very curious. I mean, we've, you know, we started, I think, with the feminine, and then we went to the masculine, and very curiously, it's bringing us back to the feminine.
In
So
what
it's
way?
this beautiful cycle. So recently, actually, you know, we've been working on the divine masculine for probably a year now, right?
Easily a year. I mean, this has been over a 2-year journey we've been on easily with
For sure.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, definitely the masculine too, yeah, for like a year. And you know, we noticed that the wounding of the father is really in our solar plexus, and the feminine is in the sacral. And through the healing of the masculine, we came up against the feminine in the way of the goddess energy, and really them showing us how and where we need to really fully embody our goddess energy. And for myself personally, it's been like, you know, I had a lot of sexual trauma when I was a child. So continuing to heal that sexual trauma, but through that, finding my own sexuality and embodying, you know, just this sensual side of myself. And through that, I can heal not only the feminine, but also the masculine. So it's been really, I mean, we're still going, right? The journey's not over yet.
It's long from over. It is a lifetime journey, really. I mean, it's a journey of the life. I mean, absolutely. And for me, that sexual trauma was also something that I've experienced in my life. And I think, you know, being able to be on a journey with someone that could hold that space and understand it was, I think for me, why it's clicking so much, because that trauma is so much about the wound of the father and the mother, you know, even if it's not literally representative of our father or our mother, it's still that wound that comes from that sort of energy.
Yeah, and I would say, interestingly, I think it's a core wound more than anything else. It's the wound that begins in this body from birth itself, from the utter trauma of being born from one world to the next, you know. And so that's the core wound. And then as we age and begin to become socialized, all of the other ways in which we wound ourselves just piles on top of this core wound, which is in a way both masculine and feminine, right? We're created by the masculine and feminine union, and then we're destroyed by the ejection from the feminine. So yeah, it's a mother wound, it's a father wound, it's a core wound. I mean, how would you define the mother wound versus the father wound?
Um, for me, I think the mother wound is connected to our, how we were nurtured or weren't nurtured. Is connected, I think, to our love, the acceptance we haven't gotten throughout our lives. It's connected with, for women, in our sexuality, for sure, but also connected in how we give and receive love, I think, how we're able to be open to giving and receiving love. It has to do with our ability to conceptualize, to give birth not only physically, but spiritually, emotionally, to ideas, to things, to relationships. And I think it's really interesting too, something that I think is really important for us to talk about for a quick second is a good part of our journey too. And I know Jacqueline can totally talk about this, is we had, we both had the same mentor. All three of us had the same mentor, but we had developed a sort of relationship with our mentor that was starting to become more of like a mentor. It was becoming more of a peer relationship, and we had a falling out, and it was a painful breakup. And for us, it was the really losing a version of our mother, a version of our mother that gave ourselves our ability to be the intuitive psychic medium we are. She held that space for us. She, you know, encouraged us. And then, it was really, we were going through a breakup together,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, and I think that's a mother wound,
Mm-hmm.
when you're rejected or not loved by your mother in the way that you need to be. Um, there was a quote I heard recently, and it said, "When you're not fed love on a silver spoon, you learn to lick it off with knives." And I think I'm using that as a quote now because I think that to me talks about the mother and father wound and not getting that fulfilled as a child and throughout your life. Like, you learn to get it somewhere and you learn to find it in places. And I think for both me and Jacqueline, we could go to the darkness in that, like we can relate to that licking of the knives, like we could do that. And I think what part of this journeying was trying not to lick the knife, and our healing from this, we were trying to, go somewhere that was going to bring us sort of a more balanced healing, but not being afraid to walk into the dark in this journey, because these journeys we go on with the divine masculine and the divine feminine, they're beautiful and full of love, and they are so full of healing. But if you don't go into that darkness, you're not going to get the other things out of it. You have to be willing to confront all of yourself and all of what it means to be a woman and have these masculine energies within you, the good and the bad, the things you've done right and the things you've done wrong. You got to look at all of it.
Absolutely. We are composed
You
of love and pain, and to deny pain, to refuse to experience it, to allow it, is to deny half of who you are. And what's the point of that? How can you be a full, whole person if you don't do that? And I think that, and also just to note that all of these things we're talking about, of course, we're women, so it appears as though we're discussing, women in the divine feminine, but this is a human journey. This is men and women. And I think anybody who's listening to this probably already is aware of that, but just to note it, it's like men also are getting in touch with their divine feminine, or must, in order to heal fully. It's not just the divine feminine of the female. But what is the how would you define the father wound?
I definitely feel that, you know, we are not, as a society, we're still not healed from, the masculine, because we're still largely a patriarchal society and we're
Absolutely.
suppressed. And there's so much healing to do from the father wound. And you know, I just want to note here, I don't know if we said it already, but just for the people listening, to clarify, like we're talking about mother and father wound, right? But it's masculine and feminine to me, you know.
Yeah.
Um, or it's just this energy, the balance, right? The yin yang, all the different ways we can describe it. But yeah, for me, it's really about the patriarchy and, you know, really going deeply into the solar plexus and healing that.
I was going to say, I think that, you know, when we talk about the divine masculine and the father, when we're talking obviously about our relationships with our literal father, but we're also talking about as women, any relationship we have with a male, whether it's a partner, a husband, a boyfriend, you know, a short-term encounter. It's our brothers, it's, you know, uncles, it's masculine friends that we have, and it's a masculine within ourselves, like the spots where we maybe um embody those traits in our life where we need to. And because we live in a patriarchal society, I think that a lot of us are forced to assume some of those, you know, whether it's in the career or the workplace or in relationships we have, in a way that maybe doesn't always serve us the best. So I think it's kind of all of that kind of, I think, lumped into healing the, you know, father wound and dealing with the divine masculine.
The more we talk, the more I feel, the more I see these two combining into one. And I guess that's the whole point, right? That there is no real divine feminine or divine masculine. It's just one great energy of all that is, right? And these are the counterparts that we see as humans that make sense of the narrative of this energy that makes no sense to us at all. But in fact, it's all one. It's all one. And so is the wound. The wound is all one as well. We can look at materialism and ego and confidence and strength as being the father wound, masculine wound, but then you can also apply that to the divine feminine, the feminine wound, the mother wound, confidence, materialism, strength, you know, ego, all combined, all one. So really it's just a wound. It's an enormous wound that we all share. It's one gigantic wound that we're all swimming in here.
There's something really curious, and I'm sure Dana will remember this. It was pretty recent journey, like a few weeks back, that we took. And again, I don't remember our intention or if we had one going in, but one of the answers or the messages I got from Spirit was, it was something to do with healing the father wound. And the message that I got was a question. And the question was, how do we treat the men in our lives? And what they were saying, I remember the journey. So I was basically seeing, it was, for me, the scene was quick. I was seeing these like little boys, like the Boy Scouts, you know, in this large open field. And they were having fun. They were playing with the fire. And then there was this woman. She was very tall and big, and, you know, just a grumpy old lady. And she came over to the boys and she was screaming. And I think she was hitting one of the boys with a stick, like, be quiet, you know. And that was her message to me, and or Spirit's message to me was, just because like we're sitting here, right? And Dana and I are trying to heal the father wound. And, you know, again, going back to like the patriarchy and how, you know, a lot of times with feminism, we're looking at how we've been treated by men, but how do we treat men in our lives, right? How do we treat our boyfriends, our husbands, our, you know, cousins, whatever, any male influence in our lives? And they were kind of saying like, how you treat other men is also a reflection of your own healing. And I thought that was so beautiful. And, you know, since we're talking about integration, I think we can take this, you know, we were specifically talking about the masculine, but I think we can take this also to the feminine side, right? And something that I've not so maybe spirit driven in a way, but I was in Mexico. I was living in Mexico for the past 6 months. And let me tell you, I'll just say, I mean, you know, we talk about all this healing and it sounds so beautiful and amazing. And it is, but let me tell you, sometimes it is hell.
Mm-hmm.
It is crying, it is fighting, it is screaming, it is punching, it is absolute hell, but
Mm-hmm.
it is so effing worth it. So, but what I wanted to say is that, you know, going to Mexico, and I was living, very in this beautiful spiritual community with these amazing people. And even though, they were so spiritual and everybody was doing this and that and cacao ceremonies and Reiki and sound healing and all this stuff, I noticed, and maybe it's also something, reflection of myself, but I noticed that the way I was being treated by other women was so ridiculous. Egos and jealousy, I mean, for myself also, but just like really horrible. And this is an interesting question to ponder. It's like, how do I treat other women?
Mm-hmm.
And that can also be a reflection of back to me and my own healing journey. But it's like we just have to be mindful of how we treat others, whether it's the masculine or the feminine, um, because I think that also helps us in our own healing journey.
Well, I think really, to really look at what you were saying, Jacqueline, about, you were looking at the women in your life and you were seeing how they treated each other, and then you were seeing where you fit into that, and having this come out of a journey is what we would be able to do journeying is we would ask a question or get an answer or get this sort of information. And then we would go a week, sometimes not even a week before the next journey, and we would start to see mirrored back in our lives through signs and synchronicities and our own behaviors and the behaviors of other people, the movies that we watched, the books that we picked up, the things we see on Instagram, the conversations we have with other people in our life. We would start to see these things unfold in such a way that allows for that change and that healing and that sort of one thing to kick into another. Because and maybe we need to talk a little bit about what we're doing in these shamanic journeys. Like, what is a shamanic journey and how was this applying? Like, maybe sharing like an example. But once we create this open dialogue with spirit, they start talking back to you in your real life in this like way that is that really allows for the transformation,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And it really allows you to see where you're doing the work and where you need to do the work, where you're on track and where you need to do a whole lot better,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean your behavior changes in a day or a week or a month. It means you get the first step of awareness.
How does the wound express itself in your behavior in your everyday life? Like, what are these patterns that are being healed by this work? How does it reflect in the patterns of your day to day? What is it that you're healing exactly, if you're comfortable sharing?
I think the easiest thing for us to apply it to is probably when we're looking at our relationships with, for us, more of the work is around the divine masculine, I think. And it can be something as simple as us both having to deal with abandonment issues from our own father and really
Mm-hmm.
looking at that and looking at how that carries into every relationship we've had with a man in our life since then. For me, with my husband, with relationships I had before my husband, with other relationships I'm playing out in friendships with men, with just how that affects your mindset, it affects your decisions, it affects your perspectives, and then seeing it also coming up in past life experiences. We had a journey we did. It was one of the few ones in the last, year or two that we've got to do in person. Jacqueline was back in New York visiting, and we had been doing a lot of divine masculine work. And then she came to New York to visit, and we met up in this lovely garden in Central Park. And we sat and we journeyed in person. We also did rape, which I think intensified the experience. And I was in that journey brought to a past life experience that involved, um, trauma from a father, and I saw how it played in this life again in a different scale, and was able to see and feel that and release it. And I had such a releasing experience. But Jacqueline was holding that space. She was also seeing this. She was seeing parts of the equation that I wasn't necessarily seeing. So it's as if you get this like full 360-degree view by doing it with someone, that they're able to sometimes see things that you can't, maybe things that are too painful for you to see,
That's
or
true.
things that you have blinders on to, for whatever reason. So many things in the next few weeks for the both of us played out in our lives with the males in our lives that allowed us to have greater awareness and perspective than we could have ever had doing it another way. What was it you said to me earlier today, Jacqueline, about us being spiritual therapists to one another? And I think
Uh,
that this journey is our form of therapy in a way. It's the way therapy has to work for us, just because I think we are so intuitive and we do live so much of our lives kind of in that other, we're able to walk between the two worlds in a way. And I think that this is our healing.
Yeah. So give a little rundown of how it works, of how you begin the journey and how you get in and and what you experience as you do that.
so essentially what we do is we come together every week, and when we started, so the shamanic journey, what it is we open a sacred circle, we do a prayer to open a space, call in all of our guides, whether they're known or unknown. We call in protection energies to protect us in this space because, like Dana said earlier, very often we go way down into the depths of the darkness. So we want to be protected as we do that. And then we will either set an intention for the journey, or we will just say to spirit, show us what needs to be healed and what knowledge you want us to have in this moment to guide us on our path forward. And it's really interesting, to see what they bring forward. Um, and I'm sure Dana can talk about her experience after too, but we'll get guides coming in from we're both very open. That's the one thing that I love working with Dina, is that there I I really feel like for both of us there's no limits to the guides. We have no fear, we have no resistance to any energies that come forward, whether they be angels, galactic beings, light beings, nature spirits, guides that we've never seen before. We're very, very open to that. And I think that's important because even though it's maybe unfamiliar, doesn't mean it needs to be scary. It's just something unknown. But if there's an energy coming in, I think it's very important to acknowledge that presence. So, we'll have our guides come forward and they'll take us on these journeys. So Dana and I are both very highly clairvoyant. So that means we see, right, with our psychic vision. And I think both of us are very strong in all the clairs, but for me, we're seeing like the guides will come in and they'll take us what we call a psychic journey. And it's almost like watching a movie, because the guides come in and they show you different things, um, or we'll hear things through clairaudience, again, using all the different clairs, and they'll answer our question, or they'll give us, like I said, whatever divine knowledge we need in that moment to heal. I think all three of us probably do these journeys, by ourselves, right? Or meditations or things like that. But it's really curious to do it together because, like Dana said earlier, she'll see something and then I'll see something, and we're seeing the same scene, for example, but we're seeing two different sides of it. And so we're kind of seeing what the other person isn't able to see. And then it reflects back to us, and we kind of build that puzzle and we're able to see the whole picture. And that is so powerful because then we take that information and at the end we close the circle and then we discuss it a little bit. And, in the next day and, week going forward, we set the intention for spirit to continue to guide us in the next week and show us and how do we integrate this knowledge. But that's basically our process. And every week we'll come together and we kind of recap, what's happened in the week and how did we integrate or not integrate. Sometimes we don't do a great job. We're human. Um, And so, but I think also having that second person there, having, Dana there is really helpful because we can hold space for each other just as spirit holds space for us, and we can hold that love and compassion and understanding. And it's a really beautiful journey.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I think journeying like this has allowed us to kind of bring the spirit world into our real life in this interesting way that I remember when I first started journeying, I'd have to go down a river and through a cave. I'd have to do all of these things to get myself into that space. And now it's just like we're always one breath or thought or shutting of our eyes away from it, and in just allowing it to unfold in your daily life and be like, oh, hey, look at this information you got and look at all of the ways it connects to my real life. I mean, we did that this morning. There was like text messages going on information Jacqueline got. And I was like, well, here is exactly what's happening. So it's also allowed us, I think, to grow as intuitives and to trust in a different way too. I don't think any of this would be possible if we weren't trusting ourselves, and we weren't really allowing ourselves to take this journey and to I think also something, when Jacqueline's talking about what we do when we journey, it is like watching a movie. It's like seeing two different sides. Like we each have two different camera angles, right? But it's also a real three-dimensional thing that happens in our body. So it's feelings that happen, sensations. There's feelings of movement when you're laying perfectly still. It's a real way to put ourselves in our body, especially when we're looking at wounds that are connected with the divine masculine and feminine. And something we've done together is really look at our own sexual traumas that have happened in our lives. And that is like, what's more in your body than dealing with trauma that you went through, like a physical trauma? There is, um, nothing more than that. And I think when you have dealt with trauma, if you've learned ways to come out of your body really easily. And I think spirit, even though we are going out of our bodies to journeys, are really the message is always that we need to go back into them. We need to treat them better. We need to recover from it. We need to see the connection in nature with our bodies. There's all sorts of interesting overlaps that are coming forward.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting then that in the process, in this beautiful process of friendship and, and healing and growth, that as you began to heal, you began to really, rather than heal the divine feminine and divine masculine, it sounds to me, you actually are integrating them through the healing, is what it sounds like you're doing, is experiencing all of the narratives, all of the sufferings and pains that exist in your body. And then as you've done that over the past couple of years, now you're opening to the integration. It's beautiful. And I think it's something that is happening for the planet too. I feel like it's something that you could both lead in some way as well. You know what I mean? Like once you've gotten to a point where maybe you feel as though you've wrapped it up, which I know never really happens, but you get to a place where you've sort of, you've reached the end of that hallway and you've made the turn to the next room. I feel like you could lead others in these journeys, offer these services together, and really focusing on trauma. I feel like if you guys could lead individuals through this, it would be really powerful. So maybe it's something to think about.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels like what we're doing is I'm like, have I never seen this before because my awareness is limited? Or are we really doing something that is maybe really different and fresh? And I
think so. Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
people do journeys, obviously, with medicine, and people meditate and people do group meditations, but this is different. This is a sharing of quantum energy. It's just not done. It is a very unique thing, I think.
What's very, very curious to me on this journey is that, especially in Mexico, but also in Peru, there's all these people in the spiritual community. Again, they're doing sound healing, cacao ceremonies, yoga, breath work, all these different things. But when I got there, I said to my friend, where are the psychics? Where are the intuitives? Where is this where is this group? Because I want to be a part of it. And it wasn't there. And I was so just floored. And I created it because I'm like, but this is what the shamans, right, are doing is they're channeling. And
Yeah.
even all these other modalities like sound healing, they're channeling sound. I was talking to someone who is doing sound healing, and she said to me she's getting kind of um different rhythms and harmonies to play, and she didn't know where it was coming from. And I said, you're channeling spirit through sound. And I was just so curious because nobody was having this conversation in a way of intuitives and psychics and doing these journeys. So yeah, I mean, I think you're definitely right. There's definitely something here and something, you know, to share it with more people, which is beautiful, that we're here talking about it because people need to hear it. They need to understand what we do and how it can help them.
And what we're doing is like you're taking a little from what a shaman does, a little from what an oracle does, a little from what an intuitive, a psychic, or a healer does. And we're just, I think, trying not to fit ourselves into a box or a label because it's not that simple. I mean, we're not really going to check any of them 100%. And I think the thing that's really interesting too that I wanted to really bring up about doing this with Jacqueline is we've been seeing over the last 2 years, I'll be in one experience and having one version of an experience, and she's in the same one from the other perspective. So what that's allowed to happen is I'm being confronted with the flip side to the situation and I'm going in. So I'm allowed to see the effects my actions can have on someone, whereas she's seeing the perspective someone can come from, and we might flip it around a little bit. And it becomes interesting because not only do you have spirit telling you something, but you get to see something from this other human side of what you're going through,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where like you can remove yourself from it in a sense that you get perspective on your situation in a different way. And that's not happening by accident. That is almost in itself that balance between the divine masculine and feminine we're talking about, because it's all about balance, right? And that's what healing is. I think at the end of the day it's balancing energies where you're not too much in the light or too much in the dark to the point that you're not functioning
Mm-hmm.
correctly or not seeing something correctly.
Mm-hmm. And the outcome of these experiences of journeys, and I would imagine especially the version that you two are, the path that you two are on, there is a physical change at the end of these journeys. You have physical experiences throughout them, so that by the end, at least for me, most of the time, there's this warmth in my chest. This, it's like your heart is honey, and you're peaceful most of the time. It just creates this open container of peace. Thank you both so much. This has been a really interesting conversation. Let's get Dana. What is your social media and your website? Start with you.
My website is from shadowstolight.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at the same handle.
Okay. And Jacqueline, what about you?
Mine, my website is thequintessentialgarden.com and also on Instagram.
Awesome. So if anybody wants to reach out to either one of them to maybe participate in one of these journeys, I think that they probably do offer the service, right? I mean, I would imagine if not now, then soon. And for any other of their intuitive services, of course, as well. They're both wonderful. Very peaceful, wonderful people. So thank you very much. And to our listeners, thank you. We really enjoyed your presence and we love you.